all of that to say, one of the things that's of interest to me is if you play the conference championship games this weekend, will Georgia, TCU, and Michigan change who was the best team in each of their conferences if they lose?
I don't think so. I mean, in my opinion, no, but I'm not on the committee. I don't get to make that decision. But if they all happen to lose, then it's only recency bias. They still have better resumes through 13 games or 12 games than anybody else because they were all 12-0. So if the resume is if it's really about the full resume, and right now conference championships in this iteration of the playoff don't matter because non-conference champions have made it in the past, then no. I mean, it doesn't. It shouldn't matter what happens this weekend. It ultimately will, and it may. And I don't think Michigan's going to lose to Purdue, but if Michigan lost and TCU lost, would you put Michigan in still because you like the Big Ten better than the Big 12 and the biases in the committee if you think there are some?
Well, let me get back to the question. If TCU or Michigan or if Georgia lose this weekend, does that mean they're not the best teams in the conference in your opinion?
No, not to me.
Craig?
No, not necessarily.
And I don't either. And I forgot who wrote this. I read it. I believe it was sometime yesterday, and it made a lot of sense. Now USC is going to get a chance to eliminate the loss on their record against Utah, which is great for USC. And obviously, if Utah wins, they're out of the picture when it comes to the college football playoff. All right, with that being said, we have seen Ohio State, and then when they got in it, they validated it by winning in 2014, which so much focus was on Baylor and TCU. They get in by hammering everybody down the stretch with their third-string quarterback, and they win the national title. That's a chance that they do it again. Now, whether or not they can do that again after what we saw against Michigan remains to be seen. So a lot to get to. What a weekend. What in college football, in your opinion? Mine was the Michigan second half against Ohio State. Anything, Craig, in your opinion, in college football that stood out the most to you?
That's a loaded question. I mean, there's a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I know that. We'll get to all of the others, too.
No, I wanted to go back. What were you saying about Ohio State just a second ago? About them getting back in?
In 2014, they slipped in. They're 5. They'll probably be 5 this year.
Yeah, but they played in a conference title game, though. That's the difference. They're not playing in the conference title game this year. They went and hammered Wisconsin, remember? That's how they got into the...
That's 59-0 or whatever.
They're not playing in the conference title game.
Yeah.
So that's... Okay, just to clear that up, I was wondering. But, yeah, I mean... there's, with an expanded playoff, the opportunity that could happen. But, yeah, Ohio State's, they're pretty much toast, although, as we've seen, some ESPN graphics that are kind of wonky go up over the last 24 hours. I don't know if you guys saw that about the playoff percentages that got people all riled up was, how much the odds still stacked were in the favor of, schools that clearly should be out of it at this point. But I'm thinking, as far as off the top of my head goes, I mean, Michigan's dominance was really surprising, although maybe it shouldn't be that surprising at this point, and just the matter-of-fact way they went about just dismantling Ohio State, making it look almost relatively easy. I was very impressed by Michigan, very impressed just by what Harbaugh's done there to really reverse course after the way he was kind of being viewed just simply for not being able to beat that one team. That was the big bugaboo, and now he's beaten them twice. He's beaten them badly. And he looks like he's going to beat him a bunch more times moving forward. I mean, Michigan's at its peak since probably the late 90s at this point, and maybe even close to surpassing even that level of play. I mean, with the trajectory that they're on right now and with Harbaugh at the helm. So very impressed by that. Just TCU finishing the job. I mean, give them credit. I didn't think that Iowa State was any real threat to them whatsoever, even if they have a good defense. It's just they weren't going to score enough points. So they just simply weren't going to score points. They could barely muster 13 points a week. They weren't going to, hold TCU to 12 and beat them 13-12. So I think for TCU to just handle their business. But what was impressive about it, to do it and not break a sweat. To do it and not, make it all stressful and have it go down to the wire just because you're playing with your... they went out there and just handled their business, and they got to enjoy the entire day as a fan base because they just didn't have anything to stress about. I respect that they didn't have anything to really trouble themselves. Texas, very impressed by how they beat Baylor and how they've closed the season.
How many consecutive running plays did they have to shut the game down and take control of it?
22.
22.
Yeah.
consecutive plays they ran with Bijan, Roschon a little bit, and they hammered a team that when they beat Texas last year, it was from what the defense did and also the run game.
You know, Baylor also probably had of course, this last 3 games has been so tragic in different ways for them, but they had sometimes you draw a team at the wrong time, and being the last game on Texas's schedule when a couple of the games that they've lost is because they didn't run the ball enough. Eventually, a coach like Steve Sarkisian is going to go,
it still took him a half.
Yeah,
It still took him a half.
And I think it just is very demoralizing for Baylor because now I don't think they really know what their identity is anymore. I think they've already lost kind of what their identity was a year ago, and now it's like back to the drawing board. And I think anything's basically on the table for discussion, not going crazy like fire Jeff Grimes. I think that would be stupid, but I think everything's up for debate. I mean, what did they do this year that was particularly good? I mean, if you really think like what was good week in and week out, the offensive line for the most part, not every week, but like compared to other aspects of this team, it was probably as consistent of a unit as they had. But looking everywhere else, I mean, just a lot of inconsistencies. So, I give Texas credit for just, muscling up. And, like, I guess my biggest thing with Baylor is their identity was being physical. Their identity was being the toughest, hardworking, most competitive. Well, now Joey McGuire is saying all that out in Lubbock. Now Matt Rule's bringing that back to Lincoln. So, that identity is not by any means exclusive to them, nor was it even when that was what they were saying, because Matt Rule learned from Penn State, he learned from Temple, he learned from other places. But, they were viewed as like, hey, they don't have as much talent as Texas or Oklahoma, but they are going to hit you and hurt you and make you feel it. And now I feel like other teams are doing that to them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so who are they? I don't know who they are right now. And their defense that would typically be their calling card isn't their calling card at the moment. They're getting ran on 20-plus straight times to end a game. That defense isn't your calling card if that's occurring, no matter if it's Bijan and Roschon or if it's Teddy and Tommy from some other school. A couple other things. I mean, A&M, credit to them for the win over LSU. I don't think many people saw that coming, even though I guess if you watch this rivalry, it actually makes sense that A&M won this game in so many ways, but got to be a bummer for Garrett and all the Tiger faithful. And Caleb Williams is stupendous. Those are some of the things that stood out to me from this weekend.
Everything you said, I agree with. The thing about